You know, when we talk about woodlands and open habitats here in the mountains, shrubs are a big component of that. It's not the same thing as woodlands and open habitats in the coastal plain with longleaf savannas and wiregrass. This is a different habitat. The birds aren't calling a lot, but what you just heard there was an indigo bunting. There's prairie warblers out here. There's field sparrows. All those species that we talked about last week at the Science Symposium that are declining, their populations are declining, this is where they are. They're in these patches out here. And when you build this habitat, they show up. And so running a bird plot out here, which I did for many years, you can sit in this one point in the morning, you can get up to 20 different species of birds here. You go into other places on the forest, you may get 7 or 8. So the diversity is striking in these habitats.
But when it comes to that sedimentation, it's a couple different factors. And this is going back to what Betty always says, the right treatment in the right place, utilization of best management practices, and to reduce impacts or the potential for sedimentation from activities to streams, the aquatic bodies, ground cover, roads, skid trails, and landings. All the research everywhere around the country is showing that's where you're getting it. If you put the units in the right place, you look at each one of those and determine, do we need additional ground cover here? Is there a high risk of potential for sedimentation? And you can address that. And then it's dealing with your roads, skid trails, landings. And that's all through the BMPs.
This is an example of a commercial timber harvest, a thinning operation that was done here. So I wanted to give a little compare and contrast between the first stop, which was a non-commercial firewood gathering area, to this stop, which is a commercial timber harvest, and it was a thinning operation. So prior to this thinning, this was more of a closed canopy forest. The goal was to open up the forest to allow more growing space and resources for the residual trees that we retain. You can see, looking through here, our prescription was to retain the native pines and oaks. So you see the scarlet oaks and the chestnut oaks, and of course lots of pitch pine and probably some shortleaf pine mixed in. So this is about 4 years.
4 years old.
Yeah, so it was implemented in 13. We followed up the very next year with a prescribed burn. And it was the same burn as the non-commercial. All this is in one unit here. You hear the diversity of birds in this spot?
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive, isn't it?
What are we hearing?
You're hearing a lot of prairie warblers. That's the one that goes, you know, it kind of trickles down. You're hearing some pine warblers, yellow-breasted chats, and some indigo buntings primarily. And all those are early successional dependent species. So they're keying in on this. And Mary had a really good question about how the bird populations fluctuate in relation to the vegetation. And so this is more open, right? A little more grassy in here. It's not quite as thick as that first spot. So you're hearing more prairie warblers and other species that are more adapted to this younger forest and maybe the native grasses, which are really thick in here. So not all early successional habitat is created different or the same, and as it ages, you see the populations of birds change with that as well.
In these places in general, you get a lot of bang for your buck. You're talking about thousands of pounds of forage per acre produced right here versus hundreds of pounds of forage in a closed canopy hardwood stand. And they did a lot of the research back in the Jim Whitworth days. He was looking at deer in the mountains and found that these were extremely important areas during those mass crop failures, but they were also anchored. They anchored home range.
Now, you know, like we keep throwing out 1%, give or take right there, of our whole forest is in an early successional stage, then and I know Jess and others have mentioned like the majority of it's in mid-successional forests and typically closed canopy, then this does play a very important role in certain areas, you know. And of course, the more of this that we can put out there, the better for the wildlife. But of course, we know it's hard to do, and and everything. The places, you got to kind of find those places where to put them. And typically, we are putting them on old logging decks and stuff like that. And it may not be the best spot for them sometimes, because we've talked about soils, and Miss Mary and all of them have mentioned that. We typically come to a soil test here. You're typically going to have to put a lot of lime on these spots and stuff, just because high acidic soils here and everything. And so whether it's rocky or whatever it may be, so you really want to pick what you, and what you do, sometimes you find out, hey, maybe this one here is a better place for natives and stuff. And so we may look at planting, getting that back to a native stand, and keeping some others, the more productive sites, food plots in a forage like this and everything.
Bogs, by the classic definition, receive only rainwater. Most of our bogs have a seep or a spring or some groundwater associated with them. Maybe they're associated with a riparian area, so they would be classically fens, even though they have low pH. They have low pH like a bog, but they technically, hydrologically, are more like fens. And we get sloppy sometimes, not only by calling fens bogs, but we call any mountain wetland a bog. So if you hear somebody say that, including me, you have to question me as what I mean. This is obviously an old beaver swamp, I think, and as Mike pointed out, there's a series of these old relic beaver dams. I remember there were 4 or 5 at least, and it gets wetter further downstream you go. This obviously has dried out quite a bit, but still it's got this Viburnum nudum, which is a very good indicator plant for mountain wetlands. This particular kind of Carex intumescens is associated with things that are wet. So anyway, this is a wetland that we would want to consider preserving. Based on our documentation of satellite imagery, we have been and then ground truthing, we believe that mountain bogs represent less than 1/100th of 1% of the habitat on the national forest, and that would include any kind of wetland. Let me say that, any kind of mountain wetland complex, less than 1/100th of 1%. That's very, very small. So each and every one is very important, regardless of what's there and regardless of what we call it. We do have, though, some classic mountain bogs that support, with some classic mountain fens that support some very rare species, some that were plant species, some that are already there, some that we have grown in greenhouses with our Georgia Plant Conservation Alliance collaborators and partners, and that we put back into those groups. But secrecy is a big deal because the plants that are put out there are highly poached. They're highly sought after by poachers. So we have to be concerned about large field trips to these sites. But the Georgia Plant Conservation Alliance is what is now recognized as the national example for plant conservation out of all 50 states and all 6 territories. And we've been awarded with 2 different awards which have recognized that, 2 national awards. It's an alliance that's made up of now 44, as of today, Georgia Forest Watch and Ecological Solutions are official members of the GPCA. We have 44 organizations, state, feds, NGOs, academics, power companies, Georgia DOT, anybody and everybody who's interested in plant conservation or is responsible for it. We get together, we pool our resources, and we do projects, plant conservation projects.